Cheryl, welcome to the Tales of Leadership podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Josh?
I can't complain. Today has been a blessing. This is my second podcast episode, so I get to do one of the things that I'm passionate about, talk about leadership, and also get to reconnect with someone that I haven't got a chance to talk to for a very, very, very long time. Most of the people that I have on this show really don't have any type of connection to pre-existing to interviewing, but with you, I feel like I know you
Yeah,
because I've got to hear your story and the leader that you are, and I'm excited to bring that and illuminate that to the world.
and thank you for this opportunity to be here. And it feels like I know you well too. Like we're family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a great place to start, and I always start off in the same, is just provide an overview to our listeners. Is who is Cheryl?
Okay, Cheryl is a thriver
Hmm.
who has overcome many traumas in life, starting as a little girl. And I now know, God didn't cause those things to happen, but allowed me to endure those things so I can now help teach and encourage and inspire and help others understand that although you may go through hardships in life, although you may experience trauma in life, but that does not define who you are. And it does not stop you from becoming great and doing great things. So I've taken that trauma, childhood trauma, and I've allowed it to help me encourage others to be great and to overcome that those things in life.
I have to find that quote, and I don't know where it is. I think it's Second Corinthians. I was trying to look it up, but uh, God can't. God will not give you more than you cannot handle or bear.
He will
Don't
not give
don't
you more
hold
than
me
you can
to
bear.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that basically sums all of that up,
Mhm.
and I think that really is defined within the stories that you've had to go through. But
Yes.
I would love, before we get started, and I love being able to ask this question to everyone that from different backgrounds, but how do you define leadership, and how has that changed as you've matured over the years?
I define leadership, and it's kind of I've evolved, and I've been able to perfect what I've always considered a leader. And it's ironic. It's kind of strange. Even as a child, I considered and thought a leader should be someone that served others,
Mm,
not to be served. Although we've experienced and seen throughout life that so many leaders look to be served. So I believe in being a great leader is knowing how to serve others. That if you can't put the needs of others before yours, then I think you struggle at being a great leader, a real leader. So
yeah,
I think being a leader is being a servant.
I love that definition, and I always break it. I call it TNT. I think you know me at this point. I'm a whiz at creating acronyms for
Yes. Hmm.
about
Hmm.
everything. But a toxic leader versus a transformational leader. Toxic leaders have them at the agenda. They are the agenda. How can
Correct.
individuals on my team serve me, advance me, so I can move to that next level? Versus transformational leaders have that servant heart, and they always ask the question first is how can I serve other people, or how can I add value to other people? And I could not agree more with you of that.
And one
That
thing
is
that I
a beautiful
also have,
definition.
I believe leadership is about being more. I have this presentation that I do that's named entitled "The Lost Art of
Mm,
Relationships," and it teaches about learning to be more relational opposed to transactional. So, in being relational, you're going to look to know those individuals that you're leading. You're going to see who they are, what their needs are, and find their look, not just focus on their weaknesses and criticize those. You already know their strengths, but when you see those weaknesses that they may have, then you're going to figure out how to transform those weaknesses, help them transform those weaknesses to become a strength. So you
Mm.
can't do that if you just have that personal agenda where you're just looking to get to the end result and make things happen. You have to be relational, establish that relationship opposed to just making that transaction.
Yeah, I think relationships within the realm of leadership, it doesn't matter what career field that you're in, that is one of the hardest things I think to develop, but the most critical aspect of leadership. And I see leadership in six distinct phases, but the decisive point that determines if a leader is successful or not is phase three, strengthening relationships. And
Yes,
if you can strengthen relationships, then you can forge tight emotional bonds. But at the glue of that is building trust.
correct.
Trust is required when you go through challenging times. You have to believe that the men and women to your left and to your right are going to make the right decisions at the
Mhm.
right time in the right frame of mind when it matters. And if you don't have that trust, then you can't work for someone. And
Correct.
I think it's true regardless of military or civilian leadership.
That's right.
How would you provide? I know that's an area that you focus on, relational versus transactional, but what are some tips that you could give people that are in leadership roles right now to try to be more relational?
To spend time, to take time to have conversations. I mean, instead of coming starting that day off when you walk into the office,
Mm.
or walk, I know you're military, walk on the field or wherever you are.
Yeah.
Of course, if it's war, you can't do that. But before you get to that point, to just have that those few minutes to connect.
Mm.
So connecting with the individuals, ask about the family, ask how was your morning, how was your weekend, how was your evening. I mean, just little simple things, and then just do things to show that you are concerned about the individual, and that's how you connect with people. You don't just see them in that position; you have to see the individual. And I don't know if you recall that I'm also an educator. I'm not, actively teaching in the classroom now, but I believe once an educator, always an educator, because there's always teaching points in life. But when I was in the classroom, I would stand at that door every morning and greet my students as they entered. And based on the energy that entered that classroom, because I had established those relationships. I got to know them. I was like that mother there in the classroom. But based on the energy that entered that classroom, determined how I started that day. I may
Mm.
have had an intended outcome, a lesson plan, but if the right energy did not enter that room, if I felt that something that they were carrying, something that was going to interfere with that lesson, me connecting with them with that lesson, then we didn't start that lesson. We may have had a life lesson. I
I love that.
Yeah, I always had a journaling. I'm a big believer in journaling, writing out your thoughts. So based on what they wrote on that paper, I would give a maybe a 5-10 minutes for them to just write their thoughts down, what they're going through, and based on, and they would have to bring it up to me, and based on what was written on that paper, would determine how I decided to interact with them. And the most important thing to me was to make that connection, to show them that they're important. So although we may not see ourselves outside of the classroom in the different positions, professional positions that we're in, but you're always a teacher.
Hmm.
As a leader, you have to be a teacher, but not only do you have to be a teacher, you have to learn to be a student. And that's something that I would train teachers. You can't teach until the student shows up. So that means you have to be willing to learn from those individuals that's in front of you, be it students, be it your employees, before you can teach them. So the student has to always be present. You have to always be a learner in order to be a great leader.
I love that. There's a saying that I've developed kind of over the years. I don't know who I heard it from, but in order to be a great leader, you have to learn to be a great follower first. And because
Correct.
it all starts from
Mhm.
that. And you
That's
have to
right.
be okay with whatever environment that you're in.
Correct.
Maybe you have to be the shepherd for individuals and kind of help them through life problems. And I love how you talk about kind of setting the condition of every morning you have a different feel for
Mhm.
individuals on your team. And
Mhm.
then you pursue, yeah, you had an agenda, but we trained a standard, not the time. Just because I said I was going to do something today, maybe something else is being drawn my attention, and we have to kind of go through that. And it's funny you said in the military, like walking on the parade field, and I first thing that popped in my mind is reading the autobiography, I believe, of General Douglas MacArthur when I was going through that award through the military, and some of he was one of the most charismatic leaders. People just absolutely loved him, but why? He would be willing to put himself in harm's way to kind of build those authentic relationships with soldiers. And I remember in World War II, they just landed on some island that was occupied by Japan, and there was sniper fire. This five-star general, which is only happening a handful of times, gets off a boat and walks on this beach, getting
Mhm.
his feet wet, all of that stuff, and goes around and starts talking to soldiers that are returning fire right now. And that's all you need to know about why he was able to build those types of relationships of where millions of people would follow him because of who he was and
Mhm.
how much he genuinely cared for
That's
people.
right. And then one thing, another thought just came to mind that I also would do, and especially as a leader, not just an educator in the classroom, but supervising, 20, 30, 50 plus people. I had to recognize that no one is a carbon copy, that
Mm,
I cannot approach everyone in the same manner. So I learned to, and I don't like using the word categorize, but that was what I had to do once I learned the individuals on my team. And then I had different categories that they were placed in that determined how I would approach them. I had those
yeah.
individuals that I would say no maintenance, where they came in, they had that they saw the big picture, they understood, we connected right away, we were like-minded. So bare minimum to nothing. Once they got their task, I still would create that relationship so they could see I didn't want to take anyone for granted, but I didn't have to put much energy into leading and guiding them. So they were my no maintenance individuals. Then I had that low maintenance where, I had to do a little more stroking. I had to spend a little
Mm,
more time, give a little more attention. And then there were those high maintenance individuals where, yeah, the energy, it was just redirecting, constant correcting, not correcting, constant connections until, sometimes, okay, they would get it and they would have a great day, but then I had to come back the next day and then start all over
yeah.
again. And then there were those individuals who brought something to the table. They were great team members, but still they were just off the chart. You had to, but I recognize that there's a purpose for everyone. Just because I had to every day like hold their hand didn't mean that they deserved to be terminated. There were times where I had to, you know, move them around or give her different assignment. For example, I hired a young lady when I was a director slash principal at a private school. She was hired as my van driver for my severely emotional disturbed students. But she was just too passive, too sweet, that sweet personality. And those students of that with that type of behavior, they needed some sternness. And
Mm,
the person that was in my front office as the receptionist, oh my God, she was just rough, just too rough, didn't have, sometimes scare parents off, scare. So I'm like, I need her on that van, and I can use that in the store. I changed their roles. I bought the van driver. She became my receptionist, and the receptionist became the van driver for those students.
Mm.
So although they were high maintenance in the positions that they were in, I recognized what seemed to be a weakness on that van, that was a strength for my front office. So
Y-
that was what I meant by seeing that, a seemingly weakness can be a strength in another area.
You remind me of a a pretty for me horrible memory that I had of kind of going through a squad live fire at Fort Benning, and it was horrible just because of the time of the year. It was August in Georgia. Fort Moore now used to be Fort Benning, so it was just super hot. I think it was 110 degrees, and we just got done doing several live fire iterations, and each one we never fully completed it successfully, so we had to keep getting, we call recocked, going
Mhm.
back and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again. And it got to the point of where, I thought I was failing as the leader because I was the squad leader. And we had to stay overnight. Every other platoon, every other squad was complete. They were going home, getting to sleep in their beds, except us. And I'm sitting there that night, and I'll never forget my squad leader, if he ever listens to this, Sergeant First Class Cabiab. He pulled me aside and is like, Josh, you have all the right tools, but are the people in those positions the right people underneath you to be successful?
Mhm.
And it never dawned on me. All I needed to do is maybe move some people around within my squad
Right.
to be better. And I did that. The next day, flew right through. And everyone was like, hey, this was one of the better live fires. And you could always chalk it up. Yeah, we did it several more times than everyone.
Mhm.
But really, what it was moving people who weren't necessarily strong in those positions and shuffling them around to people who we thought could be successful, and we just got exponential results much faster. But I would love to kind of turn it over to, where did your leadership journey start?
To tell you the truth, I did not recognize the leader in me. It was others that recognized the
Mm,
leadership abilities in me. I left the public school system due to I have a passion for teaching and believing that everyone can learn. I don't believe that individuals can't learn. So I clashed with the public school system. So I walked away from there and ended up in the private sector.
mm,
And I started as a teacher. And within a month's time, I had the principal slash director at that time coming into my classroom. And when I saw that, I was getting upset. Okay, well, why are you in my classroom? I'm not sending students out. I'm teaching my students. Any behavior students, you don't have to deal with them. I'm doing what you hired me to do. And he showed up again the next day, and then the third time. And that third time he showed up in my classroom, he asked me to come by his office. And long story short, he was offering me to go to another campus as acting director
oh
because they were
wow.
having to release the current director. And I'm like, I don't have any leadership abilities, leadership. He was like, no, I've watched you and you have what it takes. You can do it. So that was one instance there. And I can tell, several other stories where I was pulled I was hired for one thing, but then I was pulled to be in another area. And I worked in admissions at Florida Atlantic University here in Florida in Boca. Um, there, within a couple of months, was pulled into a totally different area in that admissions office because of something that individuals saw in me. So I was really taken out of my element, taken out of my comfort zone because I've never cared to be a leader. I never cared to be out front. Just give me that position in the background, give me my babies, or give me, something that I can do where there's no attention, no one is interrupting me, and allow me to work my magic. And that was something that I always just preferred to do, but others saw those leadership abilities in me. So after that, I recognized, okay, I do have something and I can do that. So that just inspired me even more to teach and to encourage and coach and mentor others to let them see that you're capable. That
Mhm.
sometimes you may not recognize your greatness, but others can see it. So go ahead and be willing to step outside of the box, to walk outside of your comfort zone and push yourself to the max.
Great leaders have the ability to find other great leaders. And
Hmm.
I always talk about the ability to stretch, is that someone is going to give you, same as the quote, from the Bible that we just spoke about from Corinthians, is that great leaders give subordinate leaders the ability to go beyond their comfort zone, stretch their abilities, but they make sure
Hmm.
that they don't have enough to where they're going to fail.
Correct.
And I think in doing that, you continue to grow. And
Yes.
that is exactly why you were chosen for those positions, because how you just defined it. I didn't want to be in front. I didn't want to have the
Mhm.
spotlight. You have that servant heart. And they saw that. And that's exactly who needs to be in those leadership positions. From my experience, those are the best leaders because they don't have an agenda that is me, 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 me. It's
Correct.
you. We're going back to the thing that we started about at the beginning, is how can I add value to the team and how can I add value to you? You talked about another thing that I love, and I have a rule. It's called the rule of refraction. Great leaders have the ability to bend light off of them back
Hmm.
to their team
That's
and
right.
the ones who actually do the work. And there's a time where we have to stand in front, but that's far and few between. That's only in those truly decisive moments where, life or death or big ticket items. Every other time that your team should be in front of you and you should be bending the light on them,
That's
giving
right.
them the credit.
Mhm. And so often they're called, because I can think back when I was a college student, and it was during the time when UNCF would do the telethons,
Mm,
and I was over a team of workers. And this important person, said to me, Cheryl, I want you to make sure, come up with some idea that how we can, honor the little people this time. I
mm,
want the little people to be recognized. And before I knew it, and that's one thing I've always been out, not always, but once I, got to a certain degree, I became very outspoken. So I'm like, excuse me, I think who you're calling the little people are really the big people, the important people. Because if it were not for those individuals, none of you would be where you are and you wouldn't be able to stand out on that stage and do what you're doing. So they're really the big people. And she
100%.
kind of looked at me like, so, and that's where we have to recognize we could not be as leaders if it were not for our team members, because we can't do it. We can't do it by ourselves. And I have this saying where I'd say that no one has it all together, but together we can have it all. So although
Mm,
I may stand out front and have the title as a leader, I can't be successful without that team doing their part. So I have to recognize that and shine the light on them to help them to be great and even become greater. And it doesn't matter if they supersede me. I think
yeah.
what was it? Was it Henry Ford that where he knew? I mean, it was his team. He had the money to do, but he knew to surround himself with great individuals in order to build the masterpiece, to build the greatness and the wealth that he did with all of his creations, because he recognized he needed great people and he needed to shine and invest in them in order to be successful. And that's what we have to recognize as leaders. We're not the great ones. We're just those servants, um, helping others be great in order for us to get the credit. Because in the end, we're the ones that get all the accolades, the credit. So it's important that we play it forward to those individuals that made us great.
That was something that I've always kind of went through in life. And that's a very powerful point, is build other leaders so well in your organization that you're no longer required,
Not
because
needed.
that's what great organizations and teams can do, is they have the ability to develop junior leaders within their organization, because that is the only way to grow sustainably. And if you can do that, then it goes back to what we talked about before of building deep levels of trust, having transparency, being able to be a thriving organization. And
Mhm.
I love that no one has it all together, but
But together
together we
we
can
can
have it
have it all.
all.
Mhm.
That kind of knowing you, knowing your story. I think you 12 years cancer free.
12, yeah,
And
August 16th will be 13 years. Mhm.
going from that, because I can only imagine how tough that was, but how did that change you and the person you are today that has that mindset of thriving, not surviving, but thriving?
Thriving. And one of the things that there were many different lessons going through that journey, but one of the most important things I think that it helped me to do, and I sow that into those individuals that I'm leading to help them, and that is self love and self
Mm,
care. So I wasn't recognizing that I was just constantly 24/7, just constantly going, constantly doing, and I was failing to put in that personal care. Although I may have been doing great things and other individuals saw, that greatness in me, but eventually I was going to wear out because I wasn't refueling. I wasn't taking that time to regroup, to refresh, to relax. I wasn't taking that personal Sabbath. So cancer, it
mm,
was almost like, and I look at it, and I think I shared this when we first met on one of the shows that we were on, is
yeah.
that Mary and that Martha, when they were sitting there, with Jesus, and Martha was complaining about Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, feeling that she was
Mm,
doing nothing. She's busy cooking, she's busy, Martha, cleaning, cooking, just constantly moving around. And Mary was there sitting at the feet of Jesus, but Martha failed to recognize Mary was doing something very important, because by sitting there in that quiet place, sitting there, I could say receiving more. We can look at it as knowledge, meditating, relaxing, refreshing the mind, gaining more insight, that was equipping her to be a better Mary. And Martha was just busy worrying about the wrong stuff and just trying to rush and do everything, to where if she would have taken the time to be quiet, to be still, then she would have recognized what Mary was doing was very important, and she needed to do the same. So, going through that cancer journey, it taught me the importance of being quiet, being
mm.
still, being able to take that break, being able to also help and recognize that my team members also needed that personal care time. So I had to recognize that if I could not leave my position, leave that job, leave that business for a day, a week, or even a month, that means that I have failed as a leader.
Yep.
That you should have been such a great leader with building your team that you could walk away and not be concerned, and know that that job was still going to be done, that the task, each task was going to be completed. So that helped me recognize that, I couldn't do it all, that I needed to take that time to met me time. And if there was an issue with me taking me time, that means that I needed to reevaluate myself as a leader.
So I was going to say, boom, podcast episode over. There's a quote. I love Aristotle, but
Yeah.
knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom.
Yes.
And kind of going through that cancer experience, which is, I would say, probably scary and deeply humbling
Yeah.
at the same time,
Yeah.
but really it prioritizes you. It's like being
Hmm.
at war and being shot at for the first time.
Hmm.
It centers you to what's truly important in life. All of these other distractions that we have that we thought were important
That's
seem
right.
to just fade away. And we become tunnel visioned on, it's like when ever say that my life flashed before my eyes. It's
Hmm.
not the car that you had or the house that you had or the food that you ate. It's the memories that you had with the people
Correct.
that you love most. Though
Memories you
the
created.
the
Mhm.
things that you've created with the memories of the ones that you love. And I think there's an acronym that I've kind of set up. It goes around the whole concept of a short halt in the military, because everything that I see through leadership is through the military. But it's stop, take a tactical pause, observe your surroundings, and then pursue with purpose. And I think too often in today's society, people want to just keep going and keep going and keep
Right.
going and keep going, and they don't take that time to journal, have self-reflection, and then it
Hmm.
just leads to burnout. You'll wonder why the quiet quitting is happening. The quiet quitting is happening is because no one's taking the time to make sure that the team is being looked after. The leaders are just going and going and going in this like hustle culture, and really it just leads to burnout. And I love how you had the awareness too, is that it's not just me as the leader that needs time off, it is the team that needs time off
Right.
too. And then you just hit the nail on the head with, if I do I have the confidence, ask this question to any leader who's listening, do I have the confidence to step away from my team right now and know that the mission is still going to be achieved? And if the answer is no, then you have a lot of serious thinking, I think, that you have to
That's right.
reflect on.
That's right. And so through that journey, one of the I have acronyms also, and
Yeah,
one of the initiatives that I do through Real Hope for Help is teaching individuals to always fly.
I was
And
going to
that
ask you that.
fly,
Yep.
yeah, that fly is to first love yourself. And, and I had to recognize with that, you can't, how can you give out and pour out that which you don't already have within?
Hmm.
So we truly can't love other individuals. We truly can't appreciate other individuals unless we first start with self.
Hmm.
So, I had to make sure that I was focusing on that self love and showing that love for myself in order for it to pour out. Because if I love myself, then I'm going to recognize just like the important things for me, that there are those important things for the other individuals too. So you have to, it all starts at home. We have to look within and make sure that, you know, everything that we know that we desire and that we want in life, then we have to make sure that those other individuals are getting it and they want it too. I mean, that they're getting, that recognize that they need, have those same needs, and desires also. But it's hard for a person to do that if they're liking that love, if they're liking that self care. Again, going back to the classroom, I had one of my teachers to tell me um, she wished she could be like me. I understand how you do so well with the students and with the employees because you have a genuine love for all people. And I
Hmm.
looked at her, I said, wow, now I understand your problem and why you're having an issue in the classroom with your students. Because if you don't understand why I can genuinely love people, and if that's something that you're not doing, then you're in the wrong place. You shouldn't be in the classroom. And she looked like, say, I don't mean to be harsh, but you can't. Those individuals, before you can teach them, they have to know you care.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a genuine care, love, or whatever word you want to use, then you've taken up the wrong position. You don't need
Mm.
to be there because that's something that you have to love. And you have to love yourself first and appreciate yourself first in order for that to exude out to others.
It's so true. And I think Brianna Greenspan, she always talks about filling up your cup before you can fill up others' cup. And I like to think of it as a battery. We are a battery. And
Hmm.
how do we charge our batteries? We charge ourselves. And then we go throughout the world, throughout the day, and we add energy to our teams, we add energy to our family, we add energy to the organization. But at the end of the day, we're still depleted, and we can't go back and provide that same amount of effort if we have not recharged our batteries. So you have to find what recharge your batteries. And I think I know something of yours, and it's called dragon boating, and I need to know more
Yes.
about what that is.
Okay, and what dragon boating is, it is a sport that a Canadian doctor, can't recall his name right now, but for individuals who have gone through cancer, if
Mm,
you are aware, a lot of there's a lot of probing and intrusion upon your upper body muscles when, even if you have just some tumors removed, and many of us have, one breast or have a double mastectomy like I did, due to my family history. But dragon boating is a safe sport. It was
mm,
discovered that that's one of the safest sports, if not the only safe sports that survivors, and I like thrivers, cancer thrivers, breast cancer thrivers can do, with learning the proper techniques to rebuild their upper body strength. And
mm.
really, if you get in that boat, which is an oversized canoe, it really strengthens you. It's a full body workout. Because what we do, and my team here in Jacksonville, is the Mama Glams, which took away the gram to make
Yeah.
glam. We are glamorous, so the Mama Glams. We are a team of 20 plus courageous women, a couple of men, um, more than 20, but it's 20 in a boat. And they're left hand paddlers and then they're right hand paddlers. And we are there working in sync together. And that's another way with teamwork. We have
Mm,
to work on one accord. One person can't outdo the other. We have to trust that individual behind us, in front of us, and on the side of us. And we're out there, we're paddling, um, for our life. We're competing against other courageous survivors out there, some calm waters, rough waters. And our saying with that is that we won the battle. Now let's paddle.
I love
So
that.
we're out there and we compete all over the world. I wasn't able to make it this year, but they just went to eight in April. They went to New Zealand,
Mm,
and we do every 4 years, just like the Olympics, where now another countries are going to be bidding and submitting their proposal to in the next 4 years to host our next 4 year competition. 4 years before this, 2018, it was in, but COVID messed up the dates. But in 2018, it was in Florence, Italy, and I was fortunate enough to travel with the team to Florence, Italy. So again, there were over 4,000 women. Each country was represented, and we for 4 days we were out there in the water and we were cheering each other on. I mean, it is just it is amazing to witness. And there are even some women who are out there in those boats that are still battling cancer, but
oh,
that
wow.
keeps them, that gives them hope to be out there with other sisters. So that is to and I never really thought about it. Teamwork. There was
Mm,
no way we could be successful if we were not willing to work as a team and recognize that no one has it all together, but together in that boat, working on one accord, on stride and coordinating with each other. We couldn't outshine each other, so we had to do it together in order to win. So it's a beautiful thing.
I love that metaphor of rowing because it's so true. If you have someone who, if you have a Josh on your boat that just goes after it, because I remember like young Josh, if you would put me in a boat with 20 other people, I would have like, hey, I'm gonna show everyone
You're
up. I'm
gonna
gonna
out
paddle as hard as I can, and then we're just gonna do circles, and you're not gonna go
and not
anywhere.
recognize you're not going to
Yeah,
gain, you're not going anywhere, because you're going to be, fighting against just you in that water, beating that water. Because if you're not paddling in sync
yeah.
together, then we're not going to go anywhere.
I love that. That is probably one of the best metaphors in leadership because there's so many different lessons to pull from. But I think at the end of the day, teamwork. If
Yes,
wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever problem you have, you can't do it alone. You have to have a team. So find the right
correct.
team and learn how to row and get on sync with
Mhm.
everyone. I got to ask, what drove you to leave your career and work for a nonprofit and kind of get into that mental health and wellness space?
Um, it's because I recognize that in the education arena, that they were just focused. They had that one agenda.
Mm,
That is to there's a lesson plan, there are standards, there you know different standardized tests. They were just driving, pushing that agenda, have the students in school the first, if the students were in school those first 10 to 12 days, so they could get the FTE, the full-time enrollment count. That means those schools got their money from the state, from the government, and then they didn't care whether or not those students actually learned or whether or not they were in the classroom, as long as we kept them in the classroom for those days each semester so they could get that pay, get that check. And it wasn't about educating students, it wasn't about teaching and developing the whole person. So I could no longer, the paycheck wasn't important to me, to where I saw my sons, I saw my grandson,
mm,
and I know what my demands were for them and are for them. So whatever demands I had for my sons and my grandson now from those educators, I put out the same thing and gave the same thing that I expected for my children. But I was
mm,
hindered because there were oftentimes when I pushed for my students, it went against the rules and regulations that the schools and the principal or the administration had in place.
mm,
So I could not truly be a teacher. I could not truly be an educator and stand firm to what my core beliefs were and stay in that classroom. So it's leaving, walking away from the job, not allowing myself to be driven by that paycheck, and walking out on faith and establishing my organization, Real Hope for Help, has given me the opportunity to go back into those schools and do it my way, so I could truly make sure that, and I know that they still have to have the right mindset. But if I'm pouring into them and showing them that I care, and if I'm getting to learn them and find out what's troubling them and show them ways to overcome, how they can cope, how they can overcome and be a success and thrive in life, then that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I'm doing. And I think it is, who is it? Is it Wes Brown? I think was it Dr. Monroe, Miles Monroe? One of them stated that you should, whatever you do, the work that you do, you should love it so much that you would be willing to do it and still put in the same passion and the energy, even if you didn't get a paycheck.
yeah.
And that's where I am with that. I'm that same energy that I was putting in that classroom, putting in as a principal, director, a leader with those teachers, and then educating those students. I'm able to do that without being hindered, because in that my last assignment in the public school system, I was told by my principal that I was an island to myself because I
Mm,
put my students first. I didn't just pay attention to the rules and the regulations. And then in the private sector, in the private school, the CEO of a company that owned like 100 schools throughout the United States, I was working for them. His motto to us whenever we would have our annual meetings was keep warm butts in seats by any
mm.
means necessary. It was nothing about truly educating and developing well rounded individuals to go out into society. So that is what drove me to establish my organization to deal with, because I always wanted the students that no one else wanted. So, and to teach them that you can thrive, you can survive, you can overcome. And I do that through journaling, helping them to write out their thoughts, helping them to write their feelings down, meditation, because, I would teach my students, you have to have a clear mind. You have to be focused in order to learn. And I know the importance of meditation in order to help you, reach that state. And then I also know the importance of the arts, be it drawing, music, any form of the arts is another way to stay balanced and to keep you focused. So those are three elements that I use with my students, with adults. I work with rape victims. I work with veterans also. I work with anyone that has experienced any type of trauma
Hmm.
to help them overcome and be a better them through journaling, meditation, and the arts, and
There's
teaching
a
love through that process.
there's a so there's three quotes. I think it really summed up everything that you just said, but I'm gonna go with two of them. And one is another one from Aristotle: is educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at
There's no
all.
education. That's right.
And I cannot imagine. I want my son and daughter taught by Cheryl. I don't
Mhm.
want my son and daughter to be taught and developed by people who want to have warm butts and seats because their heart is not aligned correctly. And to me, it almost infuriates me that there are
Yeah,
people in education space that are willing to gamble on the future of society like that. Because I mean, that is the future. That
it
is the
is.
next generation
It
that's
is.
going to come up. And
Mhm.
you said something else too, and I had one of the guests on the episode, Jason Van Camp, say this, and it just stuck with me. The purpose of life is to find your gift. The meaning of life is to give it away.
That's
And
right.
that to me, my purpose is leadership. I want to teach
Mhm.
people how to be a better leader because I don't want them to go through the same struggles that I had to go through and the loss that I had to experience.
That's
And I'm
right.
willing to give it away for free.
Correct.
Because I want
And
to
if I
make a
may
change.
share another far-fetched way that I would train teachers, and I still speak to teach individuals still to this day, I would share with my teachers and other leaders because there are some traumatic things that have happened in the workforce where you've had individuals come in and shoot up and all that, sadly.
Mm,
Um, but I would let them know because someone asked, why do you do what you do? Why do you give, pour in so much? And I let them know, I think about that student that so many individuals have given up on. And if I continue to do what I'm doing, and then one evening or one day, because, a gun and a sick mind has no, time frame as to whether they do it morning, night, or noon to go out and do
yeah.
something, bring harm. But if so happen I'm at that ATM machine and all of a sudden a gun is pointed to my head, and if I turn and make contact with that individual and that individual see that, oh, it's Miss Lawson Wright, she tried to help me, and walk away,
Mm,
I say, you never know what could trigger the mind. So I want to make sure, because I know I wasn't gonna be able to save every student, but at least I was gonna give 100%. I was gonna pour out everything within me, within my power to do that. And just so happened, you never know if you could stop because of your behavior and your attitude, you're showing that you valued that person and you tried your best, could save your life. And I actually had a student to come to me 4 or 5 years after I taught him in middle school, out one Valentine evening having dinner. And he came up to me and, Miss Lawson Wright. And it's like, he's like, you don't know me? And I was like, I think you have to be a student because my students are the only ones who would call me by my full last name. And he, called his name and said who he was. And I'm like, oh, wow, look at you. And he was like, I wanted to thank you. I graduated because of you. I'm like, baby, I had you seventh, eighth grade. So how did you graduate because of me? He said, you never gave up on me. That you
Mm,
were the only teacher that I ever had that never said a negative thing. He said, and I know I was bad. I was terrible in your classroom. He's like, my mother even gave up on me. He
mm,
was like, "Oh, when I got to that ninth grade, at the end of ninth grade, I think he said he had to repeat ninth grade, but he would say at that time, I wanted to, succeed. He say all of those words, all of those positive things that you used to say to me started to kick in. And I heard
mm.
those. By that time, I was a water ball. I'm just
Yeah.
trying. But he let me know that he was a success because I did not give up on him in middle school. Had a
Wow.
wife, had a baby, and they had started their own business. And he said all these years he wanted to thank me.
That's
So
amazing.
pouring out is not in vain. It may seem like you're not making a difference, but and we may never see the end results of our great leadership. But we have to still have that faith and believe that it's going to be a positive outcome. Whether we
Mm,
see it, some things are tangible right away, and then there are going to be some things that may not, bloom or blossom until years later. So we don't give up because it seems like we're not having a positive effect. We have to believe in our purpose and why we are doing what we are doing and continue to pour out, to be empty. And that's something that's Miles Monroe. I want to die empty, knowing that
mm.
I've served my purpose.
This is exactly why I wanted Cheryl Lawson-Wright on the Tales of Leadership podcast, because of just the powerful stories you have. And that really summed up to me is, are you planted or are you buried? The frame of
Correct.
mind. If you're buried, everything seems to be on top of your shoulders and just no way to move forward. But if you're planted, all the struggles you have right now, the issues you're going through, the turmoil that you're going through is for a reason.
That's
And
right.
one day you're going to be able to break through and see that light if you
Mhm.
continue to go. And that is such a powerful and inspiring story, that young man finding you and then sharing that story. And I guarantee you, I can only imagine, how emotional that
Yeah.
was. But kind of getting to where you are right now, what inspired you to write your book that you just wrote, Jewels of My, was it
Jewels of my
Jewels of My
journey.
Journey?
And quite a few of those writings came from my many years of journaling.
Mm,
And what inspired me to write it, and because I wanted to share it with the multitudes, I wanted to help again encourage and show individuals that there's power in writing it down. And then you may think that you can't have an impact on the lives of others, but you never know when someone else is reading your story or hearing your story or hearing inspiring words from you, how you can help someone else blossom. And like you say, bloom right where you are. You may be in a desert right now, but reading Jewels of My Journey can help you recognize that you may not see the water, but in the only water that may be there are tears that's falling from your eyes, but those tears are still water, and they can still nurture you and help you bloom and overcome, wait for that desert or for that storm to pass. So
mm,
that's the purpose of Jewels of My Journey, to help individuals see that regardless of what the journey looks like, that there are jewels there. And it's up to us to write them down and hopefully inspire someone else through our story.
if you can find that is one of the secrets to life that, unfortunately, I've just learned. But if you can find gratitude in some of your worst memories, that is where most of the true wisdom in life is found. If
Correct.
you can be grateful in some of your worst memories, then that is what is truly inspirational. And that kind of goes to, David Braun. I think he has the quote is that be grateful and have faith.
Mhm.
He's grateful in some of the most traumatic experiences that he had, and he had faith that he was going to see it through. But it could be applied to anything. And I love the title of that, Jewels of My Journey, finding jewels
Mhm.
throughout the journey and tying it all back to journaling and being able to write it down on paper.
Yeah.
Because and I shared this on the last episode, but it's true. I call it T-ball. Our thoughts shape our beliefs
Mhm.
drive our actions define our legacy. And how we think, writing it down, it gets it on paper. And you would be amazed. I would show you all the notebooks that I have just
Mhm.
written, just random notes. But what has come out of me is inspiring to me. I didn't even know that I had that inside of me.
Correct. That's
And
right.
we all have it inside of us, but we have
Mhm.
to slow down and we have to be intentional and just,
And be intentional and take that time. Even if you just start with a couple of minutes a day and just writing a thought that you may think is meaningless.
yeah.
But once you go back and read it and reflect over, you can see that there's actually a message that's going to help you do something better, help you, that, maybe you need to rethink or take a different direction. So those written words, there's power there. So it's very important for us to write them down so we can go back and reflect over
Mm,
them. And then you can add to. You may be inspired. Okay, well, there's another piece I need to add here. And that's how you develop. And I believe that's how many writers, started. I don't know, what God has planned for me. I have about four other books that I know that's in me that I've actually started. But whether or not I'm going to be that author of several books, bestsellers, I'm claiming it. I don't know. But I'm um I'm going to continue to write them down because I know it's for a purpose.
mm. So, what other projects are you currently working on right now? And could you kind of walk through your nonprofit, Real Hope for Help?
Yes, my like I said, I work with veterans. Today we have a mission here that house veterans. So today I was there meeting with the leader of the organization there with the veterans to set up a time where I will go in with them and help them, give out. I have journals. I give those to any individuals that I provide the service to. They don't have to pay for any of the supplies or any of the
Mm,
services. So I will share part of my story. I have a veteran that's on my board who will also go and he will share his story and share how writing and journaling helped him to overcome and thrive. And we will have sessions with those veterans, some that may want to get like prompts to help them get put their thoughts on paper, and then even to help those other ones that understand that just freelancing, just whatever, there's no method to it, there's no right or wrong, but just put your thoughts on paper. Who what made you mad, doing basic training. Was there something that you disagreed with, or was that something where you wanted to go off on someone? Did you um have to cry sometime, whatever those thoughts are, did you make it a career, or why did you get out? What triggered you, where you are? Do you feel that you can do more than what you're doing? So different prompts to help them overcome and understand that there's nothing wrong with putting those words on paper, even if it brings tears to your eyes, that there's more room outside than there is inside.
mm,
And we go through a thing with the release through with the organization where we use the dissolvable paper after we go through a session of meditating and thinking of something that we know that we need, that's been holding us down, that has us bound. You think of those things, be it one thing or 100 things, but you're going to be at a place to where, if you don't feel that you can release everything after that day's session, but the thing that that you can release and that's going to help you move to the next level, you're going to write that thing or those things on that paper, And then there's this bowl with this spoon where when you're ready to release it, you may decide to do it instantly, or it may take you later that day. Or, sometimes I'll leave the bowl, the equipment there, and they will come back later that night, or the next day. But whenever they're ready to release, put that paper in that water and stir it, and it's going to dissolve. And at that time, when you release it, you're willing not to pick it back up, even if
Mm,
it's something that you can't change. But you've been carrying it, because I share with them, if you can't change it, don't carry it.
mm,
So don't pick it. You may not be able to do anything about it right now, or you may not be able to do anything about it at all. So why carry it? Why allow it to hinder you from being that person that you were created to be?
mm.
So that's one of the many things that we do with the organization. We help with food. If there's a single mom that's struggling, we will go to the different pantries and get food, or we will give money, take someone to the grocery store, take individuals to doctor's appointments. I work also with the cancer survivors. We have a care package that we give to them, the journal. We give out the socks. We give out the scarves for their heads. We what else? Trying to think. The pens, little crafts. So it's just anything, any way that I know that I can help put a smile, help individuals to recognize that they are important and that they have purpose. That is the purpose of Real Hope for Help and what we do.
I I I love that. And one of the things close to my heart is veterans and helping them work through some of those issues. And that's really where all of this started for me. It tells the leadership, leadership, leadership. Again, and it kept going back to how can I impact 1 million veteran lives in 10 years?
Right.
How can I do that? I can do that by helping develop better leaders and
Mhm.
having them lead soldiers better.
Right.
That's how I do it, and I love how you're doing it, and I love your heart, like, just how big it is, and it knows no bounds. It's not just one area, it's every area. Anyone, equity, diversity, it doesn't matter your background. I am here to help you, and I'm here, most importantly, to serve you. But unfortunately, we're at the end of this episode, and I have so many questions that I wasn't able to get to. But so we're at our final show segment, and I call it the killer bees. So it's the
Mhm.
same 4 questions that I ask everyone. I call it be brief, be brilliant, be present, and be gone. If you're ready, we'll start with the first question.
Let's go for it.
So, what do you believe separates a good leader from an extraordinary leader?
Recognizing that although they may have all of their degrees and their titles, but they can still learn,
Mm.
that they are not beyond learning and learning from someone under them.
So, second question. What is one resource you can recommend to our listeners?
Be open, transparent. And the way we do that is to journal.
Mm.
Right? Yeah, every day journal, so you can go back and self-reflect to see how you can do something better the next time.
Over 75 episodes recorded. No one has said journaling is a resource. And it just dawned on me that that is the most
Mhm,
important resource
mhm.
that we have.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Okay. So, question 3: if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Mm. Never allow what you think your limits are to be a limit.
Mm.
Be willing to step outside of that comfort zone, or never put limits on yourself. Never put limits on yourself.
So, last question: how can our listeners find you? And then, more importantly, how can they add value to you or your mission?
They can find me on Facebook, all of the social media outlets. I do have a personal page, Cheryl Lawson-Wright, but then the organization is Real Hope for Help on Facebook,
Mm.
Instagram, Twitter. You have all of the social outlets. The email is realhopeforhelp@gmail.com. Website is realhopeforhelp.com, and they can reach out to me there. They can help. They can purchase a book because all proceeds from the book goes toward. There's no profit for me. All of the proceeds go to support the services of the organization. And if they would
Amazing.
like to donate it as a nonprofit, so any donations would be tax exempt. So they can feel free to donate. And if they're at a corporation like, say, Bank of America, which I have an individual who, raised funds there. They do matching grants. So anyone that, if you're making donations, you report it, let me know. I can go on to that site and let them know that this donation was made. And then that organization, that corporation will match that donation. So
Wow.
what I do, like I say, I don't get paid. Um, and it does anything great that we do, there's a cost,
Yeah.
because we don't charge any of the individuals, the recipients, anything.
Mm.
So it does take funds. It does take grant. If there's someone out there that's a grant writer that would like to donate services, that's something, because there are many grants out there that can benefit what we do.
Cheryl, this has been an amazing episode, and I'll be honest with you. When I filmed this, I was concerned that wasn't going to be able to give you my full attention because I had several things happen today, and I had another podcast that I had to film. But this is by far, I think, one of the most inspiring episodes that I've ever filmed, and helping me kind of rekindle the heart, the drive that I have just hearing yours. And I always talk about that. I try to find people that come on here that share the same core values and the beliefs that I have, is that there is a better way to lead regardless of what you're doing. And there's people, transformational leaders, what I like to call purposeful accountable leaders out there that are doing it, and they're doing it right. And you are one of them. And I'm glad to know you, and I'm glad to have you in my life. This has been an amazing episode.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Josh. And it has been a pleasure. I mean, from day one, I think we connected, and
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed communing with you. And tonight was no different. So thank you for this opportunity to share.
Yeah. Have a great night.
Likewise.